What's going on, everybody? Thanks for listening to Ensayne Comics. I'm your host, Hayden Ensayne, aka Mr. Ensayne. Alright, guys, yep, I'm gonna be honest with you. You probably know this already, depending on how old you are. So at least two. The world sucks! And I'm happy to offer you just a couple minutes of fun distraction from that fact, should you wish. So, yeah, I hope everyone's week went as well as it could, as possible. You know, I actually carved out some time for a little comic-related consumption myself this week. You know, for one, I read Bleed Them Dry, #1. That was one of my picks from last week. A super cool story set in the future, 100 years from now, when vampires have become a sizable community in the population. You know, there's some really cool little societal things they do. Like one scene, for instance, there's two detectives, one's a human, one's a vampire. The human orders a cup of coffee, and the vampire has a cup of synthetic blood. So there's little things like that. Yeah, it's really interesting. The story's really interesting. The art's beautiful. You know, I remember one really cool page where a guy gets cut in half, right? And the artist, Dite Ruan, or Ruan, how you say his name, uses 2 panels for each side of the victim. And it's kind of off-center a little bit. It looks really cool. So, I mean, if you like vampires, ninjas, and crime tales, this one's for you. Definitely gonna read that one. And I also finally watched Stargirl. Really loving this one, guys. I think it's a great family show for these dark days. And if you're a fan of the Justice Society, especially, you owe it to yourself to see it, because essentially is a Stargirl focused JSA show. You know, in recent years, I also found that I really like shows centered around towns. So Once Upon a Time, Andy Griffith, of course. And, in this same superhero world, Smallville is up there. So, Stargirl's just checking a ton of neat boxes for me. Currently, I'm completely caught up on it. I've been watching on the DC app. And I know it comes out, I guess, Mondays on DCU, then comes out on CW over-the-air broadcast Tuesdays, and then Wednesdays, so today, today, July 1st, whenever you listen to this, it comes on CW app. And apparently, some of the Stargirl cast actually came up. They were on the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, which I never finished. It was kind of interesting. But, still got that CW-ishness about it that I don't really care for. This one's got a different feel, and I really appreciate it. Definitely can't recommend this one enough. Stoked for next Monday. But, that was my week. So, without any further ado, let's get into the picks for the week. Let me first point out, of course, that, apologies, that, I'd always planned for the show to come out on Mondays. That way it would give people some time to look at these recommendations and maybe pick them up themselves. And I did that the first week for my 0 episode, which I wasn't even doing the picks just yet. But then the next week, I put it out on Tuesday, so a day later. Now this week I failed further by delaying it even 2 more days. And later in the day at that. So, but without any further ado, let's try to look at these picks, which you can go get right now. You don't have to wait 2 days or whatever. First up we have Lacey and Lily, #1. It's co-written by Andrew Shilinsky and Dave Delachis, perhaps. And Shalansky also handles the art. It's published by Darby Pop Publishing. So this is an all-ages comic about a young girl and her dog who discover a pair of costumes belonging to her grandma, which give them both superpowers. Now, okay, I personally think we have a deficit of good all-ages comics, and this one seems really fun to me. Plus, it's original superhero idea and not just a kiddie version of an existing character. I'm usually kind of put off by that stuff. That being said, I did read some Marvel Adventures stuff in middle school. That was pretty good. But, they still carry the baggage of not being, quote-unquote, the real, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, whatever. So I appreciate this one being original. And even though I'm definitely not the target audience, I did read a trade of a DC Superhero Girls on a slow work day one night. That one's neat because it takes I never watched the show or whatever other multimedia stuff was with that, but that one's neat because it takes place at a school, and the characters like Wonder Woman, Harley Quinn, and the others are students, while the others are teachers. Now, I particularly appreciate how Etrigan the Demon teaches poetry, and Wildcat is a gym teacher. If you're familiar with those characters, you probably understand that too. It's pretty fun. But anyways, Lacey and Lily, girl and her dog superhero. Enough said. All right, this next one is a spin-off to a franchise that I have not experienced myself, but it has so many cool ingredients that I may just have to dive in with this one. So, spinning out of Vampirella, we've got Sacred Six, written by Christopher Priest. With art by Gabriel Ibarra, with a special contribution by Jay Lee, which includes that bomb cover art. And that one's published by Dynamite Entertainment. I've been doing Vampirella for a while. So, I have never read any Vampirella, although I actually own a decent number of issues because they were gifted to me by my buddy Chase Rentz. Now, they're consecutive issues, which is nice, but they start at around number 3 or 4, and I keep meaning to start that particular volume from the beginning before I crack those open. That being said, I just last week I talked about how I started the 2007 Thor series from number 3, so maybe I should go ahead and take that plunge. Now, what really excited me for this book, and why it made this week's list, is the setting, which according to the synopsis is in rural Georgia, which is awesome for me because my own setting is rural Georgia, and also the fact that it's written by none other than Mr. Christopher Priest. So I mentioned a couple of my favorite characters in other episodes in the comic medium, like a Silver Surfer and Green Arrow, but another one that's just as important to me is Black Panther. I know I'm a big fan of color coordination, apparently. But anyway, Priest added so much to that character in his world during his time, including Everett Ross, who was played in the MCU by Martin Freeman, the Dormelage, like Okoye and Anika, and one of my favorite Marvel groups, the Hautau Zerazi, War Dogs, who we also saw in the Black Panther movie, if you remember the guys with the tattoo in their lips, and a ton of more stuff. Excellent. I definitely recommend you go read his stuff with Max Teixeira and some other great artists if you haven't. Priest also co-created Quantum and Woody, one of my favorite Valiant properties, and he's done some really neat stuff in recent years, like his Deathstroke run, where he introduced an evil pastiche Black Panther called Red Lion. And he was also involved heavily with Milestone, which I'm ashamed to say that's another one I haven't dipped my toe into yet. And hopefully I won't make that same mistake with Sacred Six. Coincidentally, or probably not, there apparently is an important Vampirella character featured in this called Panther. So, I'm in. Next up, we have All America Comics One Shot, drawn by Dan Nagian. I'm never sure how to pronounce his name. Written by Joe Casey and published by Image Comics. So from my understanding, Joe Casey co-created America Chavez, which is the second version of Miss America from Marvel Comics. And this story is about America Vasquez, a creator-owned pastiche version of that Marvel character. Now, I'm a huge fan of pastiche superhero comics. Groups like Squadron Supreme comes to mind, which is, oh my goodness, is my elbow popping very bad? Sorry about that. Like Squadron Supreme, which is Marvel's version of the Justice League. Certainly more people might be more familiar with now with stuff like The Boys, since that has a popular streaming series now. What's so cool about pastiche superheroes is that, that fun familiarity with the existing characters gets you in the door, but what keeps you there is how those tropes and ideas are messed with. For instance, I definitely recommend Supreme Power by J. Michael Straczynski, who we talked about in the past, and Gary Frank, which will that's probably going to be a book club selection one day. That book is a new modern take on Squadron Supreme, and one of the familiar comic lore moments that gets played with in that is Superman's, or in this case, Hyperion's origin story. Most everyone knows that Superman crash lands in Kansas and is raised by Jonathan and Martha Kent. Well, in this story, the Kent analogs are killed by the government, and Hyperion is raised by agents and brainwashed to be a soldier, essentially. Really good stuff. Now, in this case, it doesn't seem like they're really, messing with, shaking up familiar ideas, but they're going back to familiar ideas because apparently I never read it. Sad to say, but I've never read anything. Apparently, never experienced anything. Joe Casey actually co-wrote America Chavez's original stories, I guess, and so this seems to be like a chance to continue writing that character without doing it, for the company, for Marvel legally. Now, in the interview I read, it seemed like Casey was kind of downplaying the pasticheness, if you will, of All American Comics. But, I mean, look at the art, the preview art of Nighians. And, there's, not only is, we got America Vasquez, America Chavez, but there's actually, unless I'm totally mistaken, looks like a take on Captain America. So, I think, he's just being a little coy about it, I guess, or whatever. Like I said, I haven't read much America. I've read a little bit of the Ultimates. I can't remember if I read one issue or two. That's a shame. It's really cool. Seems really cool. And I know they get into some really interesting things later, but that's just how it rolls, man. Too many comics. That's a good problem to have. Up next, we have Sirens #1. This one is exclusively done by Stephen A. Ross. Well, I say that he wrote and drew it. I don't know if he did colors and everything, but this one seems interesting. I'm not sure if it's. So it's published by AAM Marcosi. I'm not sure exactly how that's supposed to be pronounced. Double AM or whatever. AAM Marcosia. I've seen this publisher around, but I haven't. Not sure how it's actually meant to be pronounced. I'm not sure also if this one is exclusively digital, but it's on a Comixology for $1.99. Whereas, oh god, hopefully that didn't come up. My neighbors are shooting. Very awesome for recording in this studio of just a room in the house. I apologize if you hear that. And let me clarify, it's not, it's target shooting, and I live in the country, so there's no sound ordinance, so there's nothing I can really do to get rid of that, to stop that from happening. Now that it probably wouldn't help anyway. Anyways. Most publishers put out something, even digitally, they put out the same price as a print book, which is ridiculous. I get it, I guess, from a big corporate, money-hungry way, but it's crazy. This one's it's $1.99 instead of the standard of today, which will probably change, but it's $3.99. This is $1.99. So this one is so the summary is: a young man finds himself in a strange and hostile alien world. Alone and afraid, he is witness to a myriad of horrors before being led to a startling discovery. A discovery that would have consequences beyond imagining. So, so the genres are saying it's action, adventure, horror, science fiction. Yes, sir. I'm in. I'll take it. And, it's one mind. It's not. I would love to be able to do that. I do. I say I do. I haven't put out my own comic strip in too long. But if I had the talent, and I'm gonna try to work on something. We'll see. But the idea is one mind. It's not a collaboration. This is pretty cool. So definitely interested in that one. Especially it's I love the classic trope of taking your character from the regular, modern, or not necessarily modern, but the mundane life, and dropping them off in a crazy world. So, like Alice in Wonderland, Chronicles of Narnia, John Carter, Mars, all that stuff. I love it. So definitely checking that one out. Art looks really beautiful too. There's some preview art on Comixology if you guys want to check that out. And finally, we have Devil's Highway #1. Art by Brent Schonover, written by Ben Percy, and is published by AWA Studios Upshot. So, right off the bat, I am on board with this just because of its AWA, because that seems like an interesting thing going on there with that publishing company. I recently read recently, it was a few months now, I guess, a couple months. I read Archangel 8, which is really cool, supernatural. Oh no. I wonder if the frogs are picking up now. Great gunshots and frogs, man. Yeah, it's South Georgia for sure. Yes, sir. It sounds like dogs sometimes. Pretty crazy. It's out here in the swamp, my friends. But Archangel 8, I can't remember who that creative team was, but it's really cool. It's like it's kind of pulpy, kind of like The Punisher, I guess. Like some Spec Ops kind of stuff as well. But by the end of it, Spoilers, whoops. I mean, it's on the cover. It seems actually angels, supernatural stuff hanging up in there. So that's really cool. But this one is seems to be about a revenge kind of story of a young woman who is going after the serial killer who murdered her father. So there's some wish fulfillment kind of stuff there for me personally. Not a victim of serial killer, but just leave it at that. There's some stuff in my family. I don't know. Everybody has their things, even if it's not a person. Maybe you lost your parent to cancer or something. How much would we want to attack of the physical embodiment of cancer in a story or something, or this virus in the world right now? So and maybe that could also be the not explicitly, but it could be a stand-in for that too. I'm also I enjoy Benjamin Percy. That's another pull for this. Although I didn't read as much of it. I mean, this whole episode just been about me not reading stuff, being vaguely connected to something. Anyhow, I read the first couple issues of his Green Arrow Rebirth, and now when I kept going, honestly, I really dug it. But that Rebirth thing, I don't know if they still do this, but they were coming out twice a week. I mean, not twice a week. Jesus, can you imagine? They were coming out bi-monthly, twice a month, and that you miss a month and you're out, man. And you got to catch back up. But I really like what he did with what he was doing with Green Arrow, because the New 52 has some cool stuff in it. I read that whole. Well, I didn't read all of Lemire, I guess. Sorry, just ruined everybody's names today. I apologize, everybody. But Lemire's run, I didn't read all of his, but I read quite a bit of that New 52 run series, and it got to a point where it took on a lot of aspects of the CW show, and I'm not a fan of the CW show. When it first was, okay, little quick Arrow tangent, right? So when it was first coming out, I had no idea it was actually Green Arrow. I was like, what the world? This is just a take on Green Arrow. It's not Green Arrow. And I'm not aware necessarily of CW. That's a Warner Brothers company or whatever. And so I thought it was like, this is a knockoff of Green Arrow. What the heck? But I'm vaguely interested still. And then I actually found out, oh wait, no, it actually is Green Arrow. They're not calling it Green Arrow. It's Green Arrow is too weird, I guess, for these people. But I watched that. I binged that first season as the second one was about to come out. And, oh no, now Train. Beautiful. All these, even in the country, we have all the noise to inflict on our art, occasionally, if you want to call this that. But anyways, Arrow Season 1. I watched it because I knew more was coming. I wasn't digging a lot that was happening in it. He's killing folks. And one of the weirdest things is what happens with his dad, where they're on a boat, and he sacrificed himself to save his son. That's cool. Okay, sure. But there's also the driver of the boat, and he kills him too. But then Ollie reveres him for all this, but he's murdered somebody. Yeah, okay, sure. I guess anybody might murder to protect their kids, but it's like, I don't know. It wasn't heroic to me. But season 2, on the other hand, that's when things were started to, okay, we're getting somewhere. We got, he's stopped killing folks. Thank you. Very nice. Stop killing folks. He's starting to have some humor to him, if I'm not mistaken, which is important, I feel like, to Oliver Queen, not being so stoic like he is in those shows. Yeah, he's got the domino mask instead of the grease paint stuff or whatever he's got on. And we have a really cool story with Deathstroke. And, we bring in Roy Harper, and he's got his thing, it's not he doesn't have a drug addiction, but he's addicted to that Mirakuru, I think it's called, super soldier serum or whatever. It was really interesting to me. And then we get to season 3. And at this point, I'm on board. Like, this is getting closer and closer to what I like. And then they just completely go the opposite direction, make him more like Batman, which was the whole one of my biggest complaints about it in the first place. And then they go the Ra's al Ghul story for the whole season, and I didn't appreciate Felicity's role, his love interest, her role in some of that. Didn't appreciate either, and yeah, that's neither here nor there. I really like what Ben Percy was doing, even though I didn't read enough of it. So that's a shame. And that's just the moral of this whole thing. Is I haven't read as much as I would like to. Never will. All right, well that's all of them. Let's move on to the news. So most of today's news topics are actually video game related. So pretty interesting. First off, Marvel released a MODOK trailer for their new Avengers game with from Square Enix. Which I gotta say, I'm not terribly interested in it, to be honest. Mostly because it seems to be very similar to the films, which is cool. I get it, but it's not what I really want from a game. I'm a big fan of the first, anyway. Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which is just like it's like a dream come true. It's a Marvel fantasy, like playing with the toys. It's awesome. But, I have to say, having Kamala Khan in this is really interesting. And, of course, the reveal that MODOK is going to be at least a threat. It's actually called, I think, titled the MODOK threat, or Threat of MODOK, or something like that. So that's really interesting to me. And even though it does have the movie kind of look, I don't think he's going to be a giant head. He seems to be just a guy with a big head and something on his head. But, that's kind of interesting. Now, more game news that is not strictly speaking comic related like Avengers, but with the power of some ridiculously hardcore extrapolation, I will attempt to make it so. So, last Wednesday, which is traditionally New Comic Book Day, so boom, there's your comic connection. So last Wednesday, Halo released an interesting little teaser on their social media accounts. So, I'm a massive fan of the Halo games and the whole multimedia franchise. And like many Halo fans, I've been starved for some Halo news of any kind on the upcoming installment, Halo Infinite, which is the first mainline game in the series we've had since 2015 with Halo 5. So Infinite is effectively Halo 6. Now, in those 5 years, we did get a spin-off game, Halo Wars 2, which is a real-time strategy game, as opposed to the main series, which are first-person shooters. And Halo Wars 2, which I highly recommend, even if you just watch the Blur Studios' beautiful cutscenes. Amazing stuff, really cool. Some story was actually probably better than Halo 5. Definitely better than Halo 5. But in Halo Wars 2, an enemy faction called the Banished was introduced. So, quick Halo lesson. In the first 3 Halo games, one of the main enemies you encounter is a multi-species group of religious fanatics known as the Covenant. Now, over the course of those games, the Covenant breaks apart, and the leftovers from the Covenant splinter off into separate factions. Now, the Banished is one such force, although technically in the canon they actually predate the destruction of the Covenant. Now, only in one game, they have become extremely popular with fans. Many of which, including myself, speculated and hoped that they might appear in Infinite. Well, this teaser we got, I just realized that in my script, it was Wednesday I was referring to, which would have been just a couple days ago, but it's actually now a whole week old now, this news. What an idiot. But anyway, the teaser we got was an audio recording from the Banished. It's a character actually speaking to us in this recording. But it pretty much, pretty close to confirmations we're going to get probably that the Banished will be appearing in the new game. And I cannot wait for that because, they're super fun to play against in an RTS. I think it would be sick seeing them in a first-person setting. Especially since one of the main races in the Banished, called Brutes, if you don't know, are an enemy type we haven't played against in, FPS Halo in 10 years with Halo Reach, so I'm stoked for that. And the comic connection, because yes, there is one. Or at least could be one. So this series, like many others, many big entertainment engines, have a lot of transmedia tie-ins, like prose novels and comic books. So I think it's only a matter of time before a comic title, or OGN perhaps, is announced. And we should hopefully be getting a ton more news and hopefully even gameplay, for God's sake, of Halo Infinite this month. July, whenever. Maybe mid-July. So hopefully I can hold out for that. Anyway, thanks for listening to Ensayne Video Games. I've been your host, Hayden Sam. Now, actual comic news, or I guess multimedia news, which connects back with Halo. we're getting some Mandalorian comic. According to IGN, Lucasfilm is launching a Mandalorian-focused publishing initiative, which will get an art book, Art of the Mandalorian, Season 1, a prose novel written by Adam Christopher, who apparently also co-wrote an issue of Star Wars Adventures, and we're getting at least 2 comic series from both Marvel and IDW. No creative team on those just yet. And we're also getting, a bunch of other stuff, like YA novels, so that's pretty cool. Now, I'm down to explore more of The Mandalorian. I really enjoyed that show quite a bit. I mean, it's not the greatest show ever made, and it's pretty on the nose with its Western and samurai influences, but out of all of the Disney-era Star Wars stuff, it's definitely my favorite. Although I've yet to see Solo or Skywalker. Also, I should probably clarify that I mean live-action video content, because Clone Wars and those Marvel comic books hadn't ran into IDWs. They've been quite excellent as well. And there's some, apart from the samurai and Western stuff, like Dead On, like, okay, this is 7 samurai, but it's 2 samurai. There's also some Mandalorian culture stuff about that show. It doesn't really fit into other stories to me, like the helmet thing. I mean, yeah, it's kind of cool that it's basically explains why Boba Fett doesn't take off his helmet in the original trilogy. But if you look at other media, they take him off all the time. Heck, just in Attack of the Clones, Jango, he has it off in most of his scenes. Or, I mean, just look at Clone Wars, too. At least the ones that I've seen. I admit I haven't seen the whole series, but at any rate, I'm very interested in this. I'm certainly excited for Season 2 of Mandalorian, wherever that happens. And I'm beyond stoked, speaking of, that Disney Plus series, I'm beyond stoked for Falcon and Winter Soldier, which is supposed to come out next month, August. Alright, so I think that's going to do it for my news topics of interest, to me, of course. After a short break, I'll be back for our book club to discuss Brunswick and Bogdanovic's Reality Check. Next week, to carry on my hype for Halo Infinite, I'll be rereading Halo Bloodline, which is an awesome 5-parter, written by Fred Valenti and penciled by Francis Portela. And so, look out for that Bloodline post that I'll be putting out on Ensayne Comics Facebook and Instagram, where you can add your thoughts to the discussion if you please. Alright, time for a reality check, right after this. Alright, welcome back to Ensayne Comics Book Club. Today I thought I'd talk about one of my favorite, well, I may have so many favorites, hard to say, but one of my favorite little mini-series that I like, called Reality Check, written by Glenn Brunswick, penciled, at the very least, I can't remember what else he is, penciled, just pencils, I believe, by Victor Bogdanovic. Man, I'm just killing these names, man, it's so awesome. It's a book I read, I'm pretty sure I got at least the first issue when it came out, so it would have been 2013, so 7 years ago, which is wild to think about. That's bizarre to think it's been that long. What's also weird looking back now is that I didn't pay attention to this, but, I read this when I was, that was 7 years ago, well, 6, I say, from my age, so I was about 20 or 21. Wait, oh my god, math, excellent, 19 or 20, excellent, I'm killing on the math. I was not 19 or 20 when I read it the first time, and this wouldn't have jumped out to me, because when something is associated with yourself, you can, say that you buy a new car, a new model of car, and you think, like, oh man, no one had this kind of car in town before I had this. But that's because of your perception. It wasn't on your radar. So I notice now that the main character is actually the age I am now. And, is it Will? It's not William. That's a historical figure in the U.S. It's, Willard Penn. And, it's crazy to think about, the story is supposed to be he's kind of a screw up, want to be comic creator. Well, he is a comic creator, not necessarily successful just yet. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, man, you certainly shouldn't do this in real life, but probably not even good to compare yourself to a fictional character, but it's like, man, I would love to have his failures, his unsuccess, if you will, because, man, I really don't, I feel like I'm a worse screw-up than Willard in this. But anyways, Willard is a He's a comic creator, and he has created this character called Dark Hour, who is, like we talked about Pastiche earlier. He's kind of a take on Batman, as it were. And he's having a terrible time. Not only, one, trying to get his comic off the ground, but, he's also dealing with a lot of pain. And, one, he lost his brother in college, which was probably just, a few years ago for him. His girlfriend left him, or he left her, I can't remember exactly, but anyhow, to be with one of the friends associates of his in college. And his mom definitely doesn't think very highly of him either. Even when he does show some success, she doesn't really seem to care. And not only that, he's having a hard time in the love department. So he's like many of us in this comic world, I guess. Unfortunately, stereotypical, but also very true, at least for me. But the whole conceit of this book, he's dealing with all that stuff, but that's the meat, But the fun bit of it is that his character, Dark Hour, Darkest Hour, I believe Dark Hour. Well, I have the book right here. Let's check it out real fast. I believe it's Dark Hour. I'm not stupid. Dark Hour. What an idiot. But Dark Hour actually comes to the real world, which is a fun trope for me because I love, let's say, I don't know, the movie Enchanted, where the characters come from the fairy tale world into the real world. And so you're dealing with a creator and his creation. They're doing interesting stuff like, this is a superhero, so he's like trying to fight crime in the real world. Not always successful, but sometimes it actually is successful. Or he's a Batman type, so he's a billionaire used to things, but he's the guy he's staying with, his creator, is a poor dude, and he's taking him to the clubs and stuff, and he's like hitting on his ex-girlfriend and stuff. But more importantly than that, Dark Hour. Oh, I gotta mention one thing real fast. I mentioned that he's a Dark Hour is a take on Batman, which is funny. But there's a great scene. I don't have that one close by, I don't think. Real fast. But he's mentioning to Dark Hour that he is a take on Batman. So I can find it. Exciting radio. Oh man, I have this one. That's cool. He's mentioning that, he is a Batman analog. And, Dark Hour's like, who's Batman or whatever? And he's like, oh yeah, I did this, this is just what, people do or whatever. And like, your villain, the Devil Inside? Now, obviously, I totally read this. I swear to God I read this. It's like giving a report on something you haven't read, but I swear I love this. Unfortunately, I have to confess, I did not script this last part out, so I'm going extemporaneous, which is I'm not good at. That's a shame. But this will be for me to listen to wince at. Yeah, you failed here, son. But anyway, he shares that with him and tells him, his enemy, the Devil Inside? For a bit, whatever. That he's meant to be like a mashup of the Riddler and the Joker with a little visual thing of Venom. But he's telling whatever it is they're trying to do trying to figure something out, and he asked Dark Hour about it. So I don't know. And Dark Hour says, well, ask Batman. I'm sure he'd know, or something like that. Very good stuff. But the whole reason why he's even in the real world is basically to help Willard move on from these things that cause him a lot of pain. The loss of his brother and the loss of his girl, and I'm kind of dealing with something similar myself these past couple years. I'm still grieving over a girl who left me 2 years ago. It's ridiculous, whatever. That's stupid, immature, I guess, whatever. And then my grandmother passed away just almost a year ago. So there's two things, and it's not the same as this, but I identify with it. And certainly nobody, my friend at least, didn't take the girl, at least, or whatever. I've done the best job overviewing this, but I guess the best thing to take away from it is, imagine, fiction Now, it is about your own personal creation, or the character's own personal creation, but I take any kind of fiction that can help you get over bad, terrible things, bad times. Just like I talked about when I started today's episode. And I said, the world's a terrible place, and I don't think we should just put our heads in the sand, ostrich style or whatever. But we have to deal with these things. But I don't think it hurts to look away every now and then. Well, that sounds bad too, I guess. Not really look away, but take a breath, I guess. Take a moment with these things. Hopefully in the future, and I do have some lined up, so these reviews will be more of a discussion with a guest. I have at least one lined up in the next week or two. So for that will be better. But for now, next week, since I'm in this Halo mood, we're going to be talking about Halo Bloodlines, and I will do my very best to actually script something out. I'm finding that's the best version of this show is written down if I don't have a guest, just so I can focus on more highlight important things I like about the story or whatever about the book. So I've obviously done a good job of convincing you of this. So definitely go check out Reality Check by Glenn Brunswick. It's only a 4-issue, written by Glenn Brunswick and Victor Bogdanovic. It's only a 4-issue thing, so it shouldn't be an issue to read, I wouldn't imagine. Where next week's is just one more 5-part series of Halo Bloodline. Fred Valente, Francis Portela. And it's about it's a lore, extended lore to the Halo universe. So I'll be scratching an itch with that. So with that, I hope I can keep up with this show. I recently started working at my part-time job, which definitely distracted from this week's episode. And I imagine that's probably going to happen eventually. I don't know if it'll be next week, so we may have to skip an episode. But for right now, the plan is to read Halo Bloodline for next week. So, thank you so much for listening to Ensayne Comics with Hayden Ensayne. Hope you have a great week, and hope you listen again.